tears and words. Tears and words. That's all we have right now. It's all we have as we've all come together today. We ask Hashem that our tears and our words are enough for today. We've come together to give kavod, honor, dignity, respect, to express affection and love and gratitude amidst our sadness and our sorrow and our grief. And we hope that our tears and our words are enough. Hashem, please help us to make sure that that's the case today, as we're here, as we must be, to give kavod acharon to a remarkable and extraordinary woman. Edna Koschitzky, Yehudit bat Moshe v'simcha nachma. To begin with sharing words of Shlomo HaMelech, we call upon Rabbi Zev Spitz of Clanton Park Shul to read the Eishes Chayil.
Eishes Chayil mi yimsa v'rachok mipninim yichra batach ba'alev ba'ala v'shala lo yachsar Gemala suto v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha darsha semer ufishtim vatas b'chefetz kapea Haisa karniyo socher mimerchak tavi lachma vatakam biyod laila vatitenterv levesa v'chok l'naroseha Zamima sadeh vatikacheo miprichapea nata karem Chagara bios masneh vata'ametz roseh. Tama kitov sachra lo yichbeh balayla neira, yadeha shilcha bakishor v'chapeh tamchu falech. Kapa parsa li'ani v'yadeha shilcha le'evyon, lo sira levesa mishale kichol besa lavush shanim. Marvadim atzasala sheish v'argaman levusha, noda basharim ba'ala b'shifto im ziknei aretz. Sadina sesava timkor v'chagor nasina laknani oz v'hadar levusha v'tischak liyom acharon. Pia pascha b'chachma v'soras chesed al lishona tzofia lichos beisa v'lechem atzlus lo sochel. Kamu vanea v'yashur abala v'yahalala rabos banos asuchayil v'at alis al kulana sheker hachein v'hevel hayofi ishar yiras Adonai hisis halal Tinula mi priyadeha v'haleluha b'she'ari ma'aseha.
We know that all of us are feeling the sadness and the pain and the loss. But surely no one feels it more keenly and more deeply than the people whom Julie loved the most and who loved her the most. Her husband and partner, Henry, her children, Serena and David, Hartley and Faye, Jono and Tamar, Leela and Joseph, her sister, Mrs. Jeanette Masuda, dear brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Saul and Mira Koschitzky, and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and the wide Podolsky-Koschitzky family. Ateret Zekenim B'nei Vanim, the crown of the elders are their children and grandchildren. V'tiferet Banim Avotam, and the glory of the children is their parents. Sharing words of Hesped today, there's no one better to speak about their mother than the children and grandchildren. So sharing words today will be Jono, Hartley, Serena, Yadin, and Nadiva. And following their words of Hesped, Rabbi Seth Grauer, the Rosh Yeshiva of B'nai Akiva Schools in Toronto, will share his remarks. John.
Kvod Rabbanim, guests. It's hard to find the right words to suitably pay tribute to someone who always had the right words for every occasion. Our family has lost its voice. As I sat in my mother's office last night to put down these words, I looked around at the walls covered with plaques from a multitude of Jewish institutions, awards, honorary degrees, and pictures of her with dignitaries from around the globe and especially Israel. I couldn't help but be struck with awe. How did one person accomplish so much in a single lifetime? It reminded me of a joke. Although comedy wasn't my mother's forte, you all know that my father is an unremitting joke teller, so in his honor, I will take the liberty to share it with you. A renowned lawyer dies at a young age and goes to heaven. When he gets there, he demands to speak to the manager and complains that his life was unfairly cut short for no good reason. The gatekeeper says, "Hold on a minute, let me check the files." He pulls up his record and replies, "I don't know what you're complaining about. According to your billed hours, you're 120 years old." Looking around my mother's office last night, it was obvious that she too had managed to beat the system and accomplished 120 years worth of achievements in a fraction of the time. It seems mysteriously that she had an intuition. She wouldn't have the luxury of all the time in the world. In that same office are filing cabinets filled with literally hundreds of the speeches she gave throughout her career. She didn't want to burden Serena, Hartley, Lila, and I to have to go through them all one day. So 12 years ago, she decided to do that work herself and turned them into a book. It's been my privilege. In the introduction to her book, my mother recounts her life's journey from Cardiff to Canada. She never forgot where she came from and was proud of her roots. My mother's parents fled Germany after Kristallnacht and resettled their family in the south of Wales, where my mother was born. They moved several times back and forth across the Atlantic before finally settling in Toronto as their permanent home. The first years in Toronto were very difficult. After my Opie was seriously injured in a car accident and lost his leg, he spent almost 2 years in the hospital, and my mother and her sister shuttled back and forth every day with 2 buses and the subway to visit and bring him kosher food. But my mother always liked to look for the silver lining, and in this case, it wasn't hard to find. A romance developed between her sister Jeanette and the chief resident who saved my grandfather's life, Dr. Masuda, who eventually became our beloved Uncle Benny. From this modest beginning, my mother never lost her humility, and she was forever appreciative of all the gifts Hashem bestowed upon her. Despite having traveled the world, her sense of awe and wonder remained. And she never ceased to appreciate her greatest gift, my father. Daddy claims to have simply been her valet, carrying her bags around the world, but he was much more than that. He supported Mommy in her every endeavor. I recall him spending many hours in that same office with her, helping her rewrite and refine her speeches until she felt they were worthy of her audience and conveyed the exact message she wanted to impart. But it wasn't all work. There was plenty of play as well. Their love of 59 years expressed itself in nightly competitive ping pong and rummikub games, keeping their reflexes and minds sharp. They have been an inspiration for us all as to what a healthy and happy marriage should look like. As far as we, her children, were concerned, she was by no means a helicopter mom, but she picked her battles when it mattered. I can think of only 2 times when she decided to meddle in my affairs, and I am forever grateful for it. The first was when she said, "You know, Tamar Rubenstein is a nice girl. Maybe you should take her out when you're in Israel." And the second time was a few years after we moved to Israel, when Lila and Joseph were coming to and considering where to live. She made it uncharacteristically clear to Lila, "If you move to Modi'in, I am not coming to visit you on Shabbos." And thanks to her persistence, we live 1 street away from each other in Ra'anana. Having her children together gave her the greatest satisfaction. Forget about living together. She needed to have us all in the same picture at each and every simcha. If one of the grandchildren was missing, she photoshopped them in to complete the portrait. I would like to conclude with an idea from the late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, whom my mother admired immensely and from whom she drew much inspiration and insight for her own speeches. He, like her, was also taken from us far too soon, and I hope that they are sharing a podium somewhere in Shemaim. The Torah only describes the death of one woman at some length, and that is Sarah Imenu. Rashi was puzzled by the description of Sarah. Vayiyu chayei Sarah 100 shana ve-20 shana ve-7 shanim shnei chayei Sarah. The last phrase seems completely superfluous. Why not just tell us that Sarah lived to the age of 127? What is added by saying these were the years of Sarah's life? Rashi is led to the conclusion that the first half of the verse talks about the quantity of her life, how long she lived, while the second tells about the quality of her life. They, the years she lived, were all equal in goodness. Yet, asks Rabbi Sachs, how is any of this conceivable? Neither Abraham nor Sarah had an easy life. Theirs were lives of trial in which their faith was tested at many points. How can Rashi say that all of Sarah's years were equal in goodness? 7 times Abraham had been promised the land, yet by the time Sarah dies, Abraham has to beg for permission to acquire even a single field with a cave to bury his wife. Then, in relation to children, Abraham is promised 4 times, "E'aseh otcha legoy gadol." Yet at this point, all he had was a single son, hardly a great nation. The reality fell far short of what they might have felt entitled to expect. That, however, is precisely the message. 1 field and 1 cave was, for Abraham, enough for the Torah to say that God had blessed Abraham with everything. 1 child, Isaac, by then married and with children, was enough for Sarah to die in peace. Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, v'lo ata ben chorin lihipater mimena. The meaning of this is clear. If you ensure that your children will continue to live for what you have lived for, then you can have faith that they will continue your journey until eventually they reach the destination. Abraham did not need to see all the land in Jewish hands, nor did he need to see the Jewish people becoming numerous. He had taken the first step. He had begun the task, and he knew that his descendants would continue it. To place your life in God's hands, to have faith that whatever happens to you happens for a reason, to know that you are part of a larger narrative, and to believe that others will continue what you began, is to achieve a satisfaction in life that cannot be destroyed by circumstance. To be happy does not mean that you have everything you want or everything you were promised. It means simply to have done what you were called on to do, to have made a beginning, and then to have passed on the baton to the next generation. The righteous, even in death, are regarded as though they were still alive, because the righteous leave a living trace in those who come after them. That was enough for Avraham and Sarah, and it was enough for my mother, Yehudit Bat Moshe V'Simcha Nachma. From the beginning of her illness, she would repeatedly say, "I had a wonderful life." She knew that she had fulfilled what she was called to do. Beyond that, she was singularly focused on ensuring that her legacy was passed on to the next generations. Her mantra was, you must remember, Mommy, we love you and will continue and promise to carry that baton and pass it on to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You're a shining light for your family, friends, and community, and you will continue to light the way for us all. Yehi Zichra Baruch.
What a Rabbanim. Mami, before I begin my remarks, I want to take a moment for some thank yous, as Hakarat HaTov and giving thanks and showing gratefulness defined you. Thank you to Shara Shemayim for having us. It is very meaningful, as this is where my mother's parents, Omi and Opie, Ellie and Max Podolsky, were members for many years. Thank you to the palliative care team at Temi Latner, to Dr. Sodi, nurses Charlene, Pesci, and Morlanio, and to all the many doctors and nurses that visited and fielded our calls. Thank you to Dr. Marla Shapiro for her longtime care and friendship, and to Drs. Perry and Segal at Sunnybrook. Thank you, Helen and Lydia. You feel like family and have been part of our lives for so many years. Thank you, Dorothy, Kathy, Benelin, and Magali, who have also had the privilege of knowing my mom well beyond this past year. And thank you to Travina, Princess, Arsile, and Vicky for your love and tender care over these past few months. Thank you to the doctors at Beilinson Hospital and to Laika and Janet for their care in Israel. Mami, to all your friends and extended family, machatanim, nieces, nephews, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, cousins who all loved you and who continually checked up on you, wrote to you, visited you, brought you flowers, gifts, notes, and your favorite treats, we are so ever grateful. Thank you to Marla Rosenfeld for her constant support and guidance, to Zer Herskowitz, Michelle Cohen, Ella Porrette, Lorraine Podolsky, Daniela Levino, Jane, Lee, Golly, and Maya, for you brought my mom therapy, healing, comfort, and joy. I hope I have not forgotten anyone. I know my mom would have been very meticulous in thanking everyone and would have worried herself with sleepless nights if she had not done so. Thank you, Auntie Jeanette. You and Mommy had a special bond, and you were together holding hands to the very end. We love you. On a personal note, to Hartley and Faye, John, Olila, Joseph, and David, you never left me alone in Toronto, and I know I need say no more. To Tamar, our sister-in-law and daughter-in-law extraordinaire, you helped pull us through this difficult year from day one in emergency and intensive care in Beilinson until Mommy took her last breath yesterday. May your special medical powers continue to heal. Daddy, the mutual love and respect and admiration that you and Mommy showered upon one another sets an example for your children and grandchildren. Daddy, as Mommy would have said, Henry, may you continue in good health, happiness, and success until 120, and continue to be a beacon and compass for your family. Mommy, in many of the speeches you have given over the years, you always begin by telling your personal story, and you speak of how lucky or fortunate you have been. The story of how Omi and Opie were fortunate to leave Berlin at the last minute, how fortunate you were to meet the love of your life, Daddy, and how you both together felt fortunate that you were the lucky ones to be part of families who had survived the Holocaust and were able to rebuild your lives in Canada. You say in the introduction of your book that when you reflect on your past, you came to the conclusion that what you possess today is not the result of any wise decision, but a gift from God, and that you feel blessed that with this gift you were able to share your good fortune with Klal Yisrael, and that you did. And so I want to tell you that we, your children, also feel fortunate to have had the best mom in the world, the most loving, caring, and worrying mom that could ever be. And I can only feel so lucky when asked, and how are you related to Julia Koschitzky? And I can proudly say, well, she is my mom, and I am the very lucky one who lives just half a block away. I want you to know that you have taught me through your actions and deeds how to be the best wife, sister, sister-in-law, daughter-in-law, aunt, machatenist, mother-in-law, friend, and safta. You have taught me how to do the should have, could have, would have routine, even though you never needed to. You have taught us all the importance of family vacations, and although it wasn't always easy, you pushed us to make it happen. We cannot keep up with the messages that have come your way over the last year, from the four corners of the earth, bestowing upon you love, and more love. And to paraphrase and quote just a few, Julia, your involvement, be it in person or otherwise, is always so powerful and inspiring. Your home was our second home. The community and World Jewelry never had a leader like you, a woman of great strength and character, a role model. We are so blessed to know you and be touched by you. Your kindness, grace, consideration, inclusiveness, positive energy, warming smile, and inspiration. You have many admirers and special friendships. Julia, the changes you initiated are so positive. You set the tone for so many campaigns and put them on track. Your humility, approachability, and extraordinary decency, tremendous strength, and fortitude. These are only a few of the attributes that your friends use to describe you. You have a special place in so many hearts, and you, Mommy, make us so proud to be your children. We want you to know that we feel that we are the most fortunate children. For many months, it has been hard for you to communicate with us, and you cannot tell us exactly what you are thinking or what you want, but we hope that we know your expectations well, and that we do understand at least a part of it. And you have said over and over again, as Jonathan's mentioned, who will remember, and dear God, who will remember? And I want you to know that we do remember, and we promise to remember. I remember listening to your speeches over the phone late at night, only to wake up the next morning, and you would tell me that you stayed up all night and rewrote it, and I had to listen all over again. No two speeches are the same, you would tell me over and over again. There is always a nuance, and you would never miss it. I would argue with you, but you insisted, and you would take pen to paper and later to the keyboard to start from the very beginning. As you quoted Sarah Henshaw in your valedictory remarks at Northern Secondary School, for words but come from the mind and grow with study and art, but the tones leap forth from the inner self and reveal the state of the heart. No one could say it like Julia. Whether you were in San Francisco, Moscow, Berlin, Montreal, Ottawa, Washington, Metula, the southern steps of Jerusalem, Caracas, Toronto, Cape Town, Morocco, Melbourne, Sao Paulo, Calgary, Geneva, Winnipeg, Amsterdam, or Antwerp, you got a standing ovation. You wowed presidents and dignitaries, and you inspired young people in every city you visited. Each and every one of your presentations was a true labor of love, and as you said when you spoke in Berlin in 1992, the past has served as my guide and my teacher. It has given me a great deal, but it has also demanded for me a great deal. That's my challenge, to use the lessons of the past to motivate me to even greater action. And so you never stopped. At the JNF dinner, Daddy said about you, I'm not going to say how beautiful she is, how smart she is, how kind she is, and what a great speaker she is, how many leading positions in the Jewish world she has had, and of course how much I love her. What I am going to do is tell you what her secret is, what makes her tick, and that is, as Rabbi Elazar said, a good heart. She is always concerned about the welfare of everyone she meets and always mindful of their dignity by making sure she doesn't offend anyone. And that is why everybody loves Julia. Me too. Your privilege of having the opportunity to speak at rallies, memorials, citizenship ceremonies, installations, thank yous, introductions, dedications, and celebrations has brought so much happiness to the recipients with your kind words and blessings. No one could do it better, and that is why they always came back to Julia. Mommy, the Sefer Torah that we dedicated in your honor just a few months ago includes your most favorite line, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. And our rabbis teach us that the word hear means not only to listen, but accept, and show your acceptance by living this way. Amongst your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, we all know that in any moment of challenge or potential danger, you always say these words. We laugh about it, but in the end, we too have adopted this custom. It did not take long for me to realize why in those times these are the first words you say. No, it's not a superstitious good luck charm, rather just a knight of old tightening his armor and raising his sword at the first sign of danger. You say these words showing that at worrying times the God of Israel was your shield and your acceptance of his ways was your sword. I cannot think of a more beautiful lesson to impart upon your descendants. I love you, Mommy, and hope you find happiness and comfort in the love we are bestowing upon you today, and I ask you forgiveness for any disrespect or wrongdoing I may have shown you. Baruch.
We find ourselves today in the period between two holidays, Purim, which just passed, and Pesach, which is a few weeks away. Two great leaders helped the Jewish people during these most difficult periods in Jewish history, a time when the very existence of the Jewish people was at stake. Those two leaders, Queen Esther and Moshe Rabbeinu, exemplify what it means to be a leader. Mother learned from Esther the power of words, the magnificent way Esther turned Haman's decree on its head with an impassioned plea to the Persian king Ahasuerus. And although words weren't Moshe's forte, his strengths came from his character, his humbleness, and his inner strength. Moshe's first act as a leader was in defense of an individual. He cared not only about the nation as a whole, but also about each and every Jew. My mom was generous with her time with the community, and she was generous with her friends, her family, and those individuals she worked with. Both Moshe and Esther were unwavering in executing and delivering what was required on behalf of the Jewish people. They were both true role models for my mom. Most of you knew my mom well. You are her family. You worked with her, socialized with her, traveled with her on her missions, and listened to her heartfelt speeches on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. And as Serena said, all I can say is that I am proud to be her son, proud that wherever I went in the world, the first thing people would ask me when I introduced myself was, how are you related to Julia Koschitzky? I'm sure, as you heard today, you will hear a lot more in the coming days and weeks about my mom's extraordinary life and why you are so proud of her. So let me tell you something about my mom that maybe you didn't know. I wasn't always a bundle of joy as a child. I remember serious conversations with my mom at the age of 5 on how she thought I could find better friends. At age 7 to 12 on how my grades at school could be better, and at 13 on the age inappropriateness of mixed dance parties. And those pink slips drove her and my dad crazy. Sometimes she lost her cool when Jono and I made so much trouble and she would chase us around the house. And when she couldn't catch us, she would pretend to leave the house, never to come back. That never worked. She loved watching a good sports game. I remember when the Leafs gave up a 3-goal lead in the playoffs to the Bruins a few years ago, she called me in New York as the game was on, screaming what schlemazels the Leafs were. She was in great shape and would never miss her daily exercise class. She was an avid skier, and I loved having her follow me down the slopes well into her 70s. But deep down, my mom cared most about her family, and she was our leader, our cheerleader. She started her journey as an actual cheerleader in high school. Some of her cheerleader friends are probably here today. And she remained a cheerleader for her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren for the rest of her life. I vividly remember her cheering me on from the sidelines while playing in a soccer game. She cheered me on through my successes and even through my failures. And over the years, she continued to cheer her family on by always being there for them at important events like graduations and not so important events like camp plays. It didn't matter if they were in Israel, Toronto, New York, or the Catskills. The important thing was that she was always there. And now she won't be there, and I will miss her every day. Shtei nishmata tzura b'tzura chayim.
Just ask Safta. These simple words were essentially our family mantra when looking for inspiration and guidance on any occasion and in any setting. As it was you, Safta, who always knew exactly what to say and exactly what to do. Whether we needed to know how to entertain guests, how to fundraise, what to wear, or how to craft a good simcha or condolence email, even if it meant we all would end up sending the same message. Simply asking Savta was always the best course of action. And as my mother and Uncle Hartley and Uncle John spoke and mentioned, Savta, you are a leader, you are our voice. So what do we do now? Well, we can no longer just ask Savta. We can take comfort in knowing that simply asking what would Savta do will point us in the right direction. For as you and Saba demonstrated together, there is no better guidance than leading by example. Together, you built a family firmly rooted in the values of Torah, community, and chesed, values that your children have instilled within their own respective homes. You lived by the words of wisdom that you proclaimed in many of your speeches, that one's actions and deeds can leave a lasting legacy. Of all the ways you have led by example and guided us, the one that stands out to me the most is prominently featured in Megillat Esther, the book of Esther, which we read last week on Purim. In the Megillah, Mordechai pleads with Esther to ask Achashverosh to intervene and stop Haman from killing the Jewish people. Esther initially refuses, at which point Mordechai says, Ki im hacharesh tacharishi ba'et hazot, revach v'hatzala yamod la'Yehudim mimakom acher, ve'at uveit avich tovedu, u'mi yodea im le'et kazot higat lamalchut. On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a crisis. There's an emphasis on the component, on the aspect of le'et, of a moment. Mordechai is imploring Esther to appreciate the significance of the moment, to recognize the responsibility she has and seize the opportunity to make a difference. This is then the turning point of the Purim story. Savta, if there ever was a person who understood and practiced this very message, it was you. Your appreciation for every opportunity you were given in life and the responsibility to make the most of every moment was apparent in everything you did. It is why you reminded us often of how one moment could change the entire trajectory of one's life, as you never know what one yes can lead to, where one simple yes to volunteer for Associated Day Schools marked the beginning of your journey as a communal leader. This is why before we set off to summer camp, you sat us down to tell us to be a leader and not a follower, and to remember that the reputation we gain at any moment will follow us for the rest of our lives. It is why you pulled me aside on my bar mitzvah, right before I was going to read from the Torah, to suggest that I take a step back, internalize the moment, in order to remember it forever. It is why you brought a notebook to every event you attended, as every speech presented a learning opportunity to jot down some notes and quotes to use in future speeches. It is why every meal, be it Pesach Seder or a regular Sunday brunch, deserved the finest china and crystal jugs, and why it was essential to get dressed to the nines for every occasion, even a Zoom bris. It is why you made a point every time we gathered as a family to express your hakarat hatov, to appreciate what Hashem has given us. And it is why, when you were deservedly bestowed with the Order of Canada, you took the opportunity to serve as the officiating government representative for new Canadian citizens, articulating to them how transformational the opportunity they had to be Canadians truly is, as you too were once a new immigrant standing in their very position. You truly never missed an opportunity to make an impact, Savta, and for that we and the entire Jewish people are forever grateful. So as I stand here today trying to give a hesped, I am inclined to change the way that this should be read. For we could not pay tribute to our dear Savta when the time arose without a few lines in her beloved poetic prose. Growing up so close to you, far less than a mile, I had the special opportunity to see you at your best, a true Eshet Chayil. Together with Saba, you created a legacy that few could match, and Saba was always thankful, as you were quite the catch. As your family and friends can surely attest, you were remarkable at everything you did, no matter the quest. Be it hosting communal gatherings, giving speeches, or leading a protest, You were always on the go, many times without a moment's rest. Whether surrounded by your family or friends, you made sure it was quite the fest, the star of every show and obviously the best dressed. You would always tell us how you were blessed, but it was our privilege, Safta, to have you, we would contest. Great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, sister, aunt, wife, many titles you did possess, showing care, compassion, and devotion to others is what you did stress. You inspired us, old Safta, to be our very best, to lead a life full of chesed, Torah community, and lest we forget, one full of zest. Te'eh nishmata tzura b'tzora chaim.
Dear Safta, I stand here today on behalf of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren from Toronto, New York, Seattle, and Israel, who all shared the undeniable privilege of having you and Saba as grandparents. I feel extra lucky, as I was also blessed to grow up just 11 doors down from you and Saba in Toronto, and then one floor above you in your beloved city of Jerusalem. And oh, did I take advantage of that proximity. As kids, we would love it when our parents went out of town, because it meant weekday sleepovers at your house. You would put us to sleep with the best crisscross, and we would wake up to the most delicious breakfast buffet with your staples of oatmeal, English muffins, and a rainbow of fruits. My friends would plan weekends to spend at your house because there was just nothing like the 5-star hospitality you offered. And in high school, it got even better, because I gained exclusive access to your wardrobe. And I'm fairly certain I was the only student wearing her grandmother's clothing to school. More recently, as your neighbor in Jerusalem, we spent our COVID days with distance dinners and Zoom activities, eating takeout from a menu you discovered and successfully ordered from in Hebrew, and watching as you unwrapped the new, yet fairly useless appliance you bought at the hardware store, for that was the only store open during lockdown, and there was no stopping your shopping. Our nights were filled with Rummikub. You always made sure everyone had a chance to win, even if that meant bending the rules. Dark chocolates, lectures, speech editing, some Netflix, and contagious laughs that would fill our eyes with tears, and once got us kicked out of a restaurant. And even when we weren't living next to each other, your presence in my life was felt on a daily basis. During the summers, like Yadin said, your famous reminder to be a leader and not a follower guided our every move, and your endless camp packages filled our cubbies with the best junk food and accessories we could dream of. During college and years in Israel, your emails, WhatsApps, and visits were the highlight of every occasion. And you never missed a chance to shower us with love, sweaters to be worn in good health, and the happiest memories. And of course, I could never go too far without meeting someone who knew you and adored you. Your name makes people light up and is always accompanied by a compliment to your leadership, generosity, warmth, grace, or kind nature. So Safta, being so close to you in every stage and in many ways, surrounded by your influence, ideals, commitment, and love, is why all of us, your family, friends, and community, truly feel blessed. Just as you took a moment at every speech, family occasion, or event to share your appreciation for your good fortune, Hashem, your family, or your community, I want to take a moment to share our Hakarat Hatov, our deep gratitude for you and Saba, for everything that you were and will continue to be for us all. And just as you would do, I would like to connect this sentiment to a portion of Jewish text. For the teachings of the Torah were the foundation of your life and the connecting thread between all you shared. We recently celebrated the holiday of Purim, a holiday that held a special place in your heart, as you would use it as a moment to commemorate your two matriarchs, Great Bubby and Omi, and now marks a significant time in all of our lives again, as it was just 1 year ago when everything changed. On the holiday of Purim, we read the story of Esther, the beautiful, influential queen who saved the Jewish nation. Albeit a natural parallel to draw to you, our regal and beautiful Savta, who dedicated her entire life to the Jewish people, I am actually drawn to a different part of the text that encapsulates who you were both as a grandmother and community leader. The last line of the Megillah talks about Mordechai and states that Mordechai was Gadol HaYehudim v'ratzui l'rov echav, doresh tov la'amo v'dover shalom l'kol zaro. Mordechai was great amongst the Jews, esteemed by a multitude of his brethren. He sought the welfare of his people and was the spokesman for the peace of his descendants. I can't read this line without thinking about our Savta. Gadol HaYehudim, you were a giant in our nation, touching the lives of Jews in every community from every background across the entire world. You took such pride in your Judaism, practicing religion with a full heart and an eagerness to learn more and engage others. And you and Saba built a strong foundation on these values, which continues to seep through the next generations. Ratzui l'rov echav, you inspired everyone you came in contact with by treating each person with the utmost respect and warmth. You welcomed newcomers, visited the sick, paid respect to those who passed, and greeted everyone with your chen, your inner and outer beauty and grace. I remember so many Fridays where my mom and I would stop by in the afternoon before Shabbat to find you, with your hair done, arranging and rearranging your perfectly written place cards you prepared for your guests. What may seem like such a frivolous act, fussing over a seating plan, only speaks towards your commitment to making each person in your home feel like the guest of honor. And so they did. Whether it was shlichim, world leaders, rabbis, childhood friends, new and old neighbors, when people interacted with you, they felt like the most important and celebrated person in the room. And this trait is what made you favorable amongst so many. Doresh tov la'amo, a description of your life's work, investing endless time, energy, and resources in supporting, protecting, and promoting your people and the land of Israel. You use your voice to demand goodness, and even in the last year, when words were hard to find, the words you did articulate were words of good, words of thanks, appreciation, and love. And finally, dover shalom l'kol zaro, guarantor of peace and wellness for all descendants. It is this final phrase that gives me comfort in life without you, Savta. The example you and Saba set will please God ensure continued pleasantry and peace amongst the family and unity within our community. You have given us parents and aunts and uncles who continue in your way in each of their homes and show the deepest form of kibud av va'em in all they do. Savta, you celebrated every moment, and nothing brought you more joy than holidays or time spent together as a family. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue to do so. I will end with the bracha and blessing you would ask Hashem to give each of us. Savta, may you bless us and keep us and bestow your blessings upon us so we will still feel you're close. We love you.
The lesson of Jewish history is that ordinary people like you and me can achieve miracles. Julie Koschitzky, it's been a privilege, page 49. Yehudit bat Moshe v'simcha nachma. Around 8 years ago, Julie gave me her book. She allowed me to read it. And she allowed me to share some thoughts. And I say that because she wasn't looking to promote it. Words cannot describe how speechless I was, though, to discover the incredible impact one person could have during a lifetime. The organizations are too numerous to count. Hadassah, Associated Hebrew Day Schools, UJA Women's Division, Nitivot, Kemoshava, Bnei Akiva, Olpana, Or Chaim, Toronto Jewish Congress, Jerusalem Foundation, UJA, of course, and Jewish Federations, Karen HaYesod, UIA, winner of the Goldstein Prize, and of course the Order of Canada. The list goes on, and I've left many out. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, a person who both Julie and Henry deeply admired, wrote on this week's Parsha, "People do not become leaders because they are great. They become great because they are willing to serve as leaders." And Julie was a leader indeed. Julie started off as an ordinary girl from Wales and achieved miracles. She shaped her family, her community, the entire city of Toronto, and in many ways all of Israel. And she achieved more in one lifetime than any of us could ever realize. But this book wasn't written for public consumption. It was written for her children, for her grandchildren. It wasn't written to be widely read. Its title, "It's Been My Privilege," personified who Julie was, the most giving person I've ever met. You heard so much from her children and grandchildren, but the same perspective and some of the same stories and ideas you're going to hear from a person who's not part of the family as well. She truly saw everything she did in her life as her privilege, and she believed that every day was a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and she therefore had a responsibility to give back. Parshat Shmini begins with what should have been solely and completely days of celebration and joy for the Jewish people in the desert. And in a normal year, these days between Purim and Pesach would have been the same in Julie's home. But just as tragedy struck to the Jewish people, tragedy has struck to Jews in Toronto, New York, Israel, and around the world. Vayidom Aaron, Aaron was silent because often words can't describe immense pain. And I'm honestly humbled at the task of trying to offer a few brief thoughts and add something to what has already been said. And I will repeat some of what's been said, but in a different way and with a different nuance. During the early parts of Tefillah, every day we say, Le'olam yehei adam yirei shamayim beseiter ubagalui, that a person should always be God-fearing privately and publicly. We all know so much about Julie's public life. However, her private life was filled with incredible yirei shamayim. Julie loved to daven, and even more so, she loved to say Tehillim. And she always had Tehillim with her. She had a very special Sefer Tehillim that she kept with her, and she had a list of people who she davened for. And the list was so incredibly long, because her care was endless. She had a deep emunah and bitachon, which never wavered. Julie personified kindness and chesed, and got true joy out of helping others. Not a day went by when she wasn't worried about someone else, and she truly felt the pain of others. She wanted to do so much for so many all the time. Every time Julie would give a speech, which was often, she would worry incessantly, as has been mentioned, whether she thanked people properly. And this was deep concern for the well-being of others. She made regular Bikur Cholim visits to so many. When she received the Order of Canada, it was incredibly important to her that she show up, do her civic duty, and grant citizenship to as many as she could. I know that because only 2 years ago she told me, as I was getting my citizenship, that she couldn't wait to present me with my citizenship. She valued that opportunity to go and participate in that way. And I'm not speaking from secondhand knowledge. I came to Toronto 10 years ago, and Julie and Henry, along with their children, Serena and David, have taken such incredible care of my family. Julie had us at her home countless times. Our families were in New York and Florida, so Julie wanted that her family would celebrate and join and participate and invite us for Shabbos, for Hanukkah, and for many other occasions. I'll never forget the first time that we were invited for a Shabbat meal. Everything was, of course, beyond elegant. Many of you have been and seen and experienced a Julie event. But she went ahead, as has been mentioned in the context of the place cards, and she put my 12-year-old daughter next to her at the table. And then she proceeded to engage my daughter in conversation as if it was her own grandchild. It was beyond remarkable. Julie came to Olpana many times over the last decade to speak. She mesmerized our students with stories. But what was most impactful was how she was able to motivate our young ladies to strive to be leaders. She spoke about the great potential that they had. She built their self-confidence. She spoke about how much they could accomplish. And our students really drew inspiration from her stories and from her life. Chesed permeated her home, and she taught her children to be moser nefesh for the community. And as we all see and we all know, she raised a family who model incredible kindness, love, and care for everyone. The true measure of her success is indeed her children and her grandchildren. Every single one of them has a strong sense of achrayut to the entire community, and this is Julie's legacy. As important as community was to Julie, as we all know, her family was her number one priority. Her children, which included their spouses, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, were her pride and joy. The relationship that she had with her sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Saul and Mira, was so special. Jeanette, you should be well. And you know how much Julie always wanted to do everything she could for you, and she appreciated everything you did for her. And Henry, you of course were her lifelong partner. You were by her side every step of the way, and I know because you used to tell me, you shep nachat from so many of her accomplishments. It was alluded to, but I remember because I asked you a similar question once. I asked you that Julie was giving speeches all over the world. I said, what did you do? And you smiled, you had a little chuckle, an incredible sense of pride, and you said to me, I got to carry her bags. I'd like to close with 3 quotes from Julie's own words in her book. Page 18, the secret is that we were chosen to live with consciousness of purpose and to embody that purpose in our very lives, to communicate that purpose to others. Julie lived a life of purpose and wanted everyone around her to as well. Page 30, Jews do not have the luxury of taking a deep breath or a vacation. Those of us committed to our common cause continue day after day, month after month, year after year. Julie never gave up and always wanted to do more each and every day. And page 190, there can be no greater joy than the joy of commitment. Julie lived a life of commitment to her community, her city, her schools, her organizations, and of course, most of all, to her family. Serena and David, Hartley and Faye, Tamar and Jono, Leela and Joseph, Jeanette, Saul and Mira, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and of course, Henry. On behalf of all the rabbis, Roshei Yeshivot, presidents, CEOs, executive vice presidents, directors of development, and all other professionals from so many organizations, thank you all for sharing Julie with us for so many impactful years. Your loss is so great, but please take some small measure of comfort in the knowledge that she positively impacted so many, baseter ubagaloy, in private as well as in public. Rabat banot asu chaya va'at alit al kulana. Many women have done valiantly, but you surpassed them all. Tehei nishmata tzura b'tzur hachayim. I'm certain that she will be quite a militzilat yosher for your entire family, our entire community, and the Jewish people all around the world. Please rise for the Kelmali.
El Malei Rachamim Shochein b'miromim hamitzei menucha nechona al kanefei hashechinah b'ma'alot kedoshim utehorim kezohar harakia me'irim umazhirim et nishmat Yehudit bat Moshe v'simcha nachma shelcha leolama ba'avur she'anu mitpalelim be'ad haskarat nishmata began Eden tei menuchata lachein Baal harachamim yastireha beseter kenafav leolamim veyitzrar beitzrar achayim et neshmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. I ask everyone to please remain in the sanctuary as the family exits.